Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Every Arkansan podcast. I'm Drew Davis, and this week we've got my friend Jamey Henderson. Jamey's the executive director at STEP. They're all about life on life, mentoring, reaching out to the community. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Jamey. We're so glad you're here. That long walk over from across the grass.
And yet I managed to get my shoe wet in that long walk. So
tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
So my name's Jamey Henderson. I'm from the greater Wilson metropolitan area, 939 people, no Sonic. It's in extreme east Arkansas. The eastern city limit to my hometown is the Levee, so that's about as east as you can get. Let's see. I moved to Central Arkansas when I went to school at UCA in '99. I'm married to Ashley. She's from Camden. She's an 870 girl too. We've got a 2-year-old redhead at the house, and I'm 37. I waited too long. That's too long. I'm too old. I cannot keep up with a 2-year-old. So anyway, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So in your day job, you were an accountant.
Yeah.
Bean counter.
Yep.
Personal, dear to me, all that bean counting business. How in the world did you end up at STEP?
I think this is probably the important thing to remember when we talk about me and STEP, because I work at STEP now, but I actually mentored at STEP for 10, 12 years before I came on staff with STEP. So I grew up in church, but I didn't follow Jesus until I was in college. Shout out to Stumo and Second Baptist Church for that. And so when I started following him from the very beginning, I always knew that discipleship was that is following Jesus, you know. And so for me, with the way I'm wired up, that's always been really, really relational. So, you know, make friends with somebody and, you know, just point them towards Jesus as the Spirit leads or as an opportunity arises or whatever. And so I've always had a heart for discipleship ever since I started following Jesus. And then once I moved down here, I started going to Fellowship North, and they're talking about racial reconciliation and how important of a part that is of the gospel, Old Testament, New Testament. It's weaved in. We just somehow miss it a lot. And so when I heard them talk about STEP, you know, discipleship in a community that looks a lot different than the community I currently live in, it just made a lot of sense to me. You know, and so to be able to be involved in discipleship and to be involved, you know, I'm a white guy. Most of the demographics over here in Eastgate are not white, and so it was an opportunity to be able to do discipleship across those racial lines, and I thought that was cool.
Absolutely, and just another cool fact: both of us accounting majors, both of us highly influenced by Steve Shadrack and Student Mobilization.
Yep.
So kudos to that organization and to Steve for all he did for all of us.
Right.
But you didn't just like jump in full force, did you, into this whole discipleship? How was that? I mean, you're
so Harold Nash used to be the director at STEP, and he was one of the pastors at Fellowship North when I was there. And so, sort of the way they recruit you, they don't tell you this on the front end, right? They just say that. So they have the summer mentoring program, which is 3 nights for 2 hours each night. So 6 hours. You know, it's a real low buy-in. And as they were talking about what STEP does, discipleship, cross racial lines, cross socioeconomic lines, I thought this was something I could do, and it's only 6 hours, right? I mean, you know, it's not that big of a deal, so I'll go try it out. And again, growing up where I grew up, instantly, I mean, I understood the kids because I grew up with kids that were a lot like that, you know. Let's be clear, Mississippi County and North Little Rock are very different places, but the reality is I grew up with a lot of kids that dealt with the same stuff that we deal with in the neighborhood, fatherlessness and generational poverty and drugs and crime and that kind of stuff. And so so I just did those 6 hours in the very beginning, and then I signed on to mentor for a school year. That didn't actually work out all that well. The first year I tried to mentor, but I don't know. It's just always made sense. I really believe God has all of us wired up in a very specific way. And the more you can get in touch with how your Creator created you, the more you're going to thrive in whatever ministry He's got for you. So
you literally, for those 10 years, I mean, how many kids were you involved with?
3 kids, but the last kid I was with, who actually moved to West Memphis this summer, so coming full circle back to Northeast Arkansas. But I was with him for 5 or 6 years. The first 2 went pretty fast, and then once I got in a relationship with him, it really started to last and take off. So
and I think that's one of the big things. I mean, it's just like that in life. It's we meet people, and we kind of like people, but there's not this connection. But with discipleship, I mean, God's created us in this process, and it's just cool how when that relationship clicks,
yeah,
how it just keeps going. And so, how old was this child or this young man when you started?
Malik was in 4th grade when I first started meeting with him, and so he was a challenge at first. First of all, anytime you meet anybody new, it's like a little weird, right? Especially in an intentional relationship. The word intentional gets thrown around all the time like it's a good thing, and I think it is a good thing, but it also can create some weird dynamics, right? By saying that, you're saying I'm in a relationship with somebody I probably wouldn't be in a relationship with otherwise. And he had a lot of anger problems that would cause him to shut down. And so really the first couple of years we were in STEP, I don't know, 1 out of 3 or 4 nights, 1 out of 3 or 4 weeks, he'd have to go home. Like, he would have gotten so mad that he just sort of shut down on us, and I'd have to walk him back to the apartment. And I don't know exactly what was going on there. He's not to an age where he can verbalize that to me yet. But by the time he moved this past summer, I mean, we were hanging out all the time. I was picking him up and going to church with him. He was over at my house eating meals all the time. He was playing with my daughter. You know what I mean? He really was starting to become a real part of our family. And I've even seen him since he's gone to West Memphis. I went over there and picked him up, went to a Grizzlies game. So.
That's something that I think a lot of people, it scares them.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of I'm going to pick up this stranger whom I don't know, who comes from an area that I've heard rumors about that area. It's dangerous, or it's drugs, or it's gangs, or all the stereotypes everyone on one side of town hears about the other side of town.
Right.
But, I mean, it wasn't an instant, he's automatically in my house. It was a building trust of both of you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's one of the things. It scares people to think, I would do that, but I might have to give out my phone number.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like foreign missions are easy because no one's getting your number. They're not going to be calling you at 2 o'clock in the morning for who knows what reason, or their mom shows up on your front doorstep. But, I mean, with that, I mean, how in the world was your wife receiving that during that time? I mean, I think that's those of us that are married, that's an interesting dynamic of this adopted child, so to speak.
Well, my wife mentors too, so that helps ease the transition a little bit, right? Because she gets it. But I married the right girl, to be honest with you. I mean, she knew what I was about by the time we got married. I told you I started following Jesus when I was in college, and from then it hasn't always been exactly as it should be, but I've always understood that I needed to be in intentional relationship with people. And it's funny that you bring this up. I hadn't really thought about this. On one of mine and Ashley's first dates, I'm putting that in air quotes, like I went and picked her up, and we showed up to the restaurant, and there were like 6 other people there, and she's like, this isn't a date. You know what I mean? So I think from the very beginning, she's always known that I wanted to invite people into my life. I don't ever want it to be me and you holed up in some suburban house not doing anything. Like, we all want to be in this thing together. And so by the time we talk about STEP, it's just an extension of that. It's just an extension of how I'm wired up. It's not, I don't want to say it's not special, because it is special. God's using me to help redeem a part of a kid's story, right? And using him to redeem part of my story. But it's really not all that. It just wasn't weird for her by the time we got to that point in our relationship.
And, I mean, there's relationships that have been going on. I mean, your relationship of 4 years is pretty spectacular in the mentor-mentee, especially with youth. But, I mean, there's some relationships that you guys have been having that are like,
oh yeah, I mean,
long term. I saw something on social media the other day of one of your alum. I mean, that she'd been involved for a long, long time.
Yeah, she's in California, and she's trying to sell tickets to our fundraiser, so that's pretty cool. And she's in California. She's still in touch with her mentor that's here. We just shot a video for that That was actually this guy, Mike Alexander, that was a mentor here for a long time. His story's a little bit like mine. You know, the first 2 or 3, like, it just didn't take. Kids moved away or they didn't want to come anymore. And Rob, who's our guy's mentoring coordinator, said, well, I've got this one more kid, just come meet him. And, you know, that's how Rob is, right? And so he met Adrian, and he said, well, I guess I'll give this one more try. And, you know, I hate to be so, like, anecdotal because everything doesn't work out this way, right? But, I mean, you know, Mike was there when Adrian's 25 now. He's married and he has 2 kids. Mike and his wife were there when both of those kids were born. And, like, I know that sounds like this movie thing, but I mean, it's real life. When Adrian was telling the story of this, when the second kid was born, Mike and his wife were out there with the first kid and then brought his oldest son in as the second son was born. And I'm like, this is real life. Mm-hmm. They were out there, you know, this is not, you know, cut to the movies, oh, I'm there for the birth of the child. It's like, no, they were out there changing diapers and dealing with a crying baby because they're in this thing together. And so, yeah, I mean, there's some crazy long-term relationships that have come out of STEP. And you know.
The young lady that handles all of your ladies' discipleship, now, what her story was?
So she was born in Eastgate. Okay. She actually moved to Chicago and was raised in Chicago and then came back. But the way she really got connected with Jesus was her kids, like, tricked her into coming to a Bible study at STEP because her kids were in the mentoring program. And so that's a really cool thing, is that we are now starting to see STEP be turned over to people that are from the neighborhood. I mean, like, what's better than that, right?
Exactly. I mean, full circle.
Right.
That's it. That's what discipleship is: is build up and send out. Yeah. And the cool thing is send out continues to be their home.
Right.
I mean, it's so crazy, the stuff that I'd heard about Eastgate.
Yeah.
And then when Kristen told me, hey, we want to start an adopt-a block in Eastgate, it's like, really? And then they came over here, and then things just kind of progressed in this neighborhood. There is a real sense of community over here.
Yeah, and you know, that's you mentioned something earlier about people being, you know, scared of the neighborhood or whatever. I don't, you know, people in every neighborhood know who's there to do good and there's who's there to cause trouble. And if you're there to do good, people don't really hassle you that much. You know, they're supportive of you doing good things in their neighborhood. You know, it's not, the us-them divide is not quite as strong as people think it is, you know. So.
And now, I mean, I can't remember, how many years old are y'all this year, STEP?
Let's see, 86, so 33.
33 years old. Yeah. All here in this community. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just, it's so crazy, just the longevity of so many of the people that are involved. And how many kids are y'all currently mentoring?
Right now we're at about 60. And I need to say this too. So we have our mentoring and our tutoring programs that meet, you know, next door to you guys, but we also have encourager programs in schools that are all across Pulaski County. I mean, North Little Rock, and Pulaski County special school districts. So that was actually, I think that was the first program that STEP started, was the one that was in the school, in this elementary school, oddly enough, where we're shooting this right now. And so yeah, I mean, it's a long history at 3 churches. It was, I'm not going to list them because if I get something messed up, I'll be in trouble. But 3 churches decided to start this really at the height of the gang crisis. Things were really tough down here. Rob says all the time, like, people act like they want to be worried about this neighborhood now. They don't know what neighborhood we started in, you know. And so it's really cool to see that, you know, I mean, again, I keep saying the same thing over and over, but it's what it's all about. Jesus redeeming even the story of Eastgate, you know. So.
And so, I mean, the Encouragers program, let's just kind of talk about that, because that's another one of those kind of like the easy entry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically just going and having lunch with a kid at school.
Yeah,
I mean,
if you're worried that you don't have proper theology to do our mentoring program, first of all, that's ridiculous. But if you're worried about that, the Encourager program is exactly what it sounds like. You're not there to tutor. You're not there to evangelize. All you're there to do is encourage and love on a kid that might not be getting enough encouragement as is. And so you just sit down with them, have a snack, maybe work on something that the teacher's given them. But really, your only goal there is to encourage them.
And I think that's something that's really important that a lot of people miss out on in life. Is so many of these kids, they're struggling at home, they're struggling in school, just to be able to say, "Hey, I believe in you,"
Yeah.
or "Hey, this is." I mean, that's a world of wins in their book.
Well, and one-on-one, everything that STEP does is one-on-one. I think that's probably the thing that's distinctive about us. We don't have any programs that are, a teacher up front talking to a bunch of people. Everything that we do is one-on-one. And the reality is, it's easy to say, and these kids, they don't get any one-on-one time. How much one-on-one time do you get? You know what I mean? Honestly, without a phone or a television or a group of people or whatever, how much time do you get to spend looking somebody eyeball to eyeball, and y'all are the only ones in that conversation? And so everything we do is like that, and it's the thing that really drew me to STEP, and that's certainly the thing that's kept me there.
And then, the other side of this is just looking at all the other crazy things that have kind of grown out of STEP.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Officer Norman posts all the time
Right.
on social media is right out here at the bus stop on
Right.
Monday mornings.
Yeah, it's just our STEP. I feel like STEP's investment in Eastgate has triggered these other things that you're talking about. So there's a basketball league called Crossover Basketball. There is the bus stop ministry, and basically it's just, I think some ladies heard that fights were happening out here at the bus stop, and so they came out and started giving donuts and coffee and that kind of stuff to keep things calm.
At dark 30 in the morning,
Yeah.
at the school bus.
Cold
bus
30
stop.
in the morning,
Yes.
too. There's also a Bible study that's for the moms of the kids that are in STEP.
Well, and then y'all do y'all's Christmas Mall.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
And it's so much more because it's we see you guys walking from your office to the bus stop for after school
Mm-hmm.
for no other reason than to say, "Hey, did you have a good day?"
Yeah.
Which is a world of difference because you don't see many parents at the bus stop.
Right.
And we always say here, it's whoever spends the most time with the person is going to win the battle of influence.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many opportunities just to get there and then just to look at what can I do.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is we really try. Don't get me wrong. The reason the mentoring program exists is to give people some handles. So like we provide our volunteers with a Bible study, and we give them some kind of craft or game or something to do just so that you have a way to connect. But we really don't want it to be that programmatic. You know what I mean? And that's what you're talking about when our mentoring coordinators are meeting the kids at the bus stop, right? Let's just love on them and give it, and so that when an opportunity arises to point them to Jesus, we're able to do that. We've earned the right to have that conversation. And it's sort of the same thing with our Bible studies and stuff. Here's a tool. Here's something for you to talk about. But man, if your kid had a bad day and just needs to talk about it, love on them like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool, just the freedom we try to give people, because people hear discipleship and all this stuff, they think it's this, I don't know what they think it is. They think it's something it's not. I guess we read the Gospels and we hear these stories about Jesus, but we don't think about what happened on the road between. They were just hanging out and talking, and, Jesus was earning their trust to be able to point them towards the Father. That's really all we're here to do, So.
And I think one of the other things, just at least for our ministry, that has been spectacular is I remember when I was starting, and there were a couple of people that I was asking around, like, who in the world do I need to talk to? Because I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
I have no clue what
Right.
I'm doing. And Harold Nash was number one on that list. I took him to North Little Rock Chili's and I said, okay, what am I getting into?
Yeah.
And then Rob, who's been with STEP for 35 and a half of 36 years. He's been there forever. But I think this is one of the other things that's really cool is your mentors are not just putting it out there. You guys are pouring into them and coaching and equipping them and discipling them.
Yeah. So the people who say this, we talk about the kids a lot. The actual mission statement at STEP is to equip people in the name of Christ, serve inner city children through intentional relationships. I should know that better than I do. But to equip people, we are really here to help the body of Christ be the body of Christ. We know how to go sit in pews, and we know how to go to Bible studies, and we know how to sing songs, but do we know how to do the last thing he told us to do before he went to heaven? You know what I mean? Are we actually going and making disciples? And so it is really cool to get to be a part of that, because that's a redeeming part of these people's story. Most people were raised in church and became Christians when they were 8 years old, but they've never been discipled. So how in the world are they supposed to know how to disciple them? We get to kind of walk them through that process. So.
And I think the other cool thing is your story of moving from a mentor to full-time ministry. You're not alone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's several other ministries throughout Arkansas that started with a mentor that just fell in love with what they were doing, and God just said, hey, I want you to do this more. I want you to take this to Conway, or I want you to take this to West Little Rock, where people think, oh, they don't need this, but they do.
Right.
And I mean, so I think that's another thing that just amazes me over all these years, to see the mentors equipped and then sent out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and we tell them all the time, like, this is really all about y'all. I can't love 20 kids well enough. Rob can't love 20 kids well enough. Nikita can't love 20 kids well enough. But what you're learning here, you can use it anywhere. All it is being intentional with your time, having good conversations with somebody. And so, yeah, I mean, we'd like to see, you know, we don't want this to stay in the gym, and we don't want this to even stay with this one kid. Just take what you're getting here and use it everywhere. So
it's awesome what you guys are doing. So for someone out there that's listening to this, or just roaming around in the world saying, God wants me to do something, I don't really know what it is. I mean, every summer y'all do talk about that again, the 3 weeks.
Yeah, so every summer we have our summer mentoring program. So our normal programs only meet during the school year. So during the summer, a Tuesday through a Thursday. I have to be careful about how I say this because it's confusing to people. You can volunteer on a Tuesday through a Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30, and you just kind of try out what mentoring is about. You know, that'll be happening in June or July, I think July, of this year. And it's just a way to try out what we're doing. And hopefully what will happen during that process is you'll realize this is not as scary as I thought it is.
Right.
I want to be here. The kids want to be here. And anything I have questions about, there's not just the staff, there's tons of people around me to help work through that stuff with. I don't know. It's almost like we're called as followers of Jesus to be in community with each other, you know?
What?
And so it's just a good short-term way to try this out and see if it's for you, because it's not for everybody. I understand that I am wired up this way, and my story dovetails perfectly with what we try to do at STEP, and that might not necessarily be the case for everybody. But you can try it for 6 hours.
Right. You can do anything for 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
And then your year-round program that kind of onboards kind of with the school schedule.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so that's why when I say STEP isn't for everyone, one of the reasons for that is we do ask you to commit to a whole school year. And that's a big ask. You know, it's not just pop in and do something for the day. If you're going to volunteer to be a mentor at STEP, you need to commit to an hour every week for, essentially 9 full months, you know. And so that's a big ask. But again, the purpose of the summer program is to sort of demystify it for you a little bit. You know, if you just want to try it out, it's really as simple, you know. I promise you, the Bible studies are not complicated. I promise you, the games are not hard. It's really just all an opportunity to connect. And the Encourager program kind of is the same way. There's not really we have a literacy camp that meets that sort of preps you for tutoring and sort of preps you for encouragers, but that's its own thing because it's in the schools and it's not evangelistic, right? We want to. They have invited us in as guests, and so we want to be respectful of their rules. So.
And I think the other side of this to remember, and a lot of people miss out on, is consistency. Mm-hmm. Consistency is probably the most powerful weapon we have. Number one, because most people that are living in poverty I think we look at poverty and we say, oh, it's money.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's money, it's relationships, it's resources.
Yeah.
And no one's been consistent in their lives. A person that's struggling with something.
Right.
And getting in there and getting consistent and saying, hey, I'm going to be here starts to break down those barriers so that you can be in a relationship.
I mean,
so
I've got
that you can butt heads and be friends.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. It's funny. This happened just a couple of years ago. So you think I've been mentoring at STEP for 8 years. I'm starting to think, I kind of got this thing, right? I pulled up to my mentee's house and I said, I was picking him up. He was going to go to church with me. And I said, hey, man, I thought you were supposed to be with your dad this weekend. And he said, well, he didn't come get me. And I said, okay, is he sick? Did he have to work? What's the deal? And he just looked at me like, what are you talking about? I just told you he didn't come get me. Like, there wasn't a reason. There wasn't an excuse. Like, that's just part of his normal life, is that, oh, my dad said he was going to come get me and he didn't. Like, you know how mad I would have been if my parents were 15 minutes late picking me up from baseball practice? You know what I mean? Like, which speaks to how entitled I am, but also just showing up. Every time I told him I was going to show up, and I did, like, God used me to redeem that part of his story. And that's exactly what you're getting at. This stuff, it can get messy, but it's not complicated. If you can show up, if you can pray, and if you love Jesus, you can do this.
Don't worry about the theology. It's all about Jesus, and if we point to Jesus, all the other crazy stuff can work itself out.
Absolutely.
So, what's the best way if a person's like, man, I really I want to learn more about this? How do they communicate with you guys? What's the best way to get in touch with STEP?
Well, I mean, you can. So the website, stepministries.org, you can go out there, and all of our email addresses, all of our cell phone numbers. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but all of our cell phone numbers are out there. Honestly, we're so relational. We don't have a form. I took the form down off the website. We want you to call or email us, and we can take you to breakfast, or we can take you to lunch, or and meet with you, and really have a real conversation about what it is we're about, and see if it's something that you think you could be on board for. So.
Well, Jamey, thank you for spending time today, and thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Every Arkansas podcast. My friend Jamey Henderson, they love discipling, reaching out that one child and putting them with one mentor, discipling them, teaching about Christ, and encouraging them. I hope you walk away from this knowing that, hey, you've got something to offer. There's a child who needs you, a person who needs you. It doesn't matter what you've been through or your past. You can make a difference by discipling someone else.